Hey everybody, this is That Reminds Me Of, and today we are talking about Cruella, the new Disney film directed by Craig Gillespie. You've got Baron and the Doc here.
This is the show where we watch films and we talk about them, but we also talk about the films that they reminded us of. And it's spoiler heavy, so if you've seen the film already, that's cool. If you haven't, maybe go and watch it first. Okay, so Cruella, directed by Craig Gillespie, but probably more so known as being part of the Disney franchise.
Yes.
Where do we start?
No idea where to start, except probably we should start before we get into anything with a synopsis, and I believe it's your turn, Doc.
Oh, crikey, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna try. Well, Cruella is Disney's attempt at an origin story for one of history's greatest villains, Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians. It rather than focusing on Cruella, it focused on her alter ego, Estella, who is born with half her hair black, half white, and that kind of represents the split personality, the good and the evil about her. So the good is Estella and the evil is Cruella. Paul, from the start.
Mind blowing right off.
I know.
Yeah.
She's kicked out of school for being a naughty girl, and that leads to a series of events where eventually her mum is killed. Her mum's the sole parent here, and her mum's killed by 3 vicious Dalmatians. Estella is left to fend for herself. She teams up with Horace and Jasper, a couple of vagrant kids, and they grow up together and live by crime through their teens and just grow up together as a little crime family. Jasper clearly has a hots for Estella, by the way, which is a little bit of a sub-theme in the novel.
Correct, but it never goes anywhere too romantic, does it?
No,
stays very Disney.
It's very Disney,
and he hasn't got a shot really, does he?
No shot, but I do feel sorry for him, and he's much more endearing than the original Jasper.
Totally.
But Estella has grander plans and all that sort of crap. She's got a passion for design. She ultimately cons her way into working for this Baroness, who's a fashionista and played by Emma Thompson. When Estella realises that Emma Thompson is the one that actually ordered the dogs on her mum, her sort of fascination with her turns to her being a nemesis all of a sudden, and Estella becomes Cruella and goes head to head with Emma Thompson as, who can be the baddest and also who can be the biggest fashionista in the town. And ultimately, Cruella wins, fueled on by the fact that she actually realizes that her nemesis in pure Star Wars fashion is actually her mother. So Emma Thompson's her mum, and Cruella or Estella wins a day, and we're all set now to watch 101 Dalmatians.
Absolutely. And apparently Cruella 2, which is in the works already.
Ah, wow. Well, as it should be, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a long synopsis. I thought it was a pretty good synopsis.
I think it was good. I think you covered most of the points. Clearly, though, the main, probably the most interesting thing here is her journey from Estella to Cruella, and that's the real thing that makes this whole film work. How did you feel about that? I mean, and also, how did you feel about the fact that there's no hint of a good girl underneath Cruella in 101 Dalmatians, as far as I can remember? It's been a long time since I've seen it. I know you've re-seen it. And they've gone and mined into this. They've made something of the white half, the good half, and the dark half of her personality, and they've turned a whole film out of it. What do you think?
Well, firstly, I didn't re-watch 101 Dalmatians. I watched it for the first time.
Oh, really?
So I'd never seen it. I'd never seen all the Glenn Close nonsense that came after it.
Did you watch that too?
I started watching it and then kind of gave up. Not in disgust, but in apathy.
Okay.
So I did like 101 Dalmatians very much, might I say.
We're talking about the Disney cartoon.
The Disney original cartoon. I was moved by it, dare I say.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy? Because I'd never seen it.
I love it.
And what was the question? It was...
how do you feel about the mining into the sort of almost creation of a backstory that had a good and evil aspect to it?
I wasn't sure what I would feel because, like, Cruella in the original has no redeeming qualities. And how are we possibly going to find the good in her? And I started the film almost thinking, well, you know, you're like, good try, but clearly she's evil, so you're not going to convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
But I liked it. It's obviously in the vein of, I don't want to ruin any things that it reminded you of, but in the vein of the likes of the Joker or Joker, in terms of origin stories of people that we previously hated.
Yeah.
But I thought that was ripe to mine. Like, she's a well-known character and an interesting character. Why not get in there?
Do you think, okay, so the Joker is a clear reminds me of for this film. Do you think that this film would exist if not for the Joker?
No, probably not. It kind of gave it license.
I mean, I don't know if it was in the works. I don't know if it was, but the Joker's just done what this film's trying to do so beautifully. Then this film comes along. It makes you go, well, of course, the Joker just did it. It makes you wonder, you know? Or maybe that's a sign of the times.
Isn't it more Maleficent? Or how do you say it? Angelina Jolie film?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because so Disney have form with this sort of stuff. With mining.
That's a good point. I'd completely forgotten about that one. That is a good point. Yeah.
Oh, good. Oh, that was going to be one of my my picks for what it reminded me of, but I just assumed it would come up because it was so obvious.
Yeah, well, true. But Joker was a clear one for me as well. So we've talked about two that are just, you know, right up on the forefront of this kind of filmmaking, which is, you know, a fairly new thing, I think. I was actually trying to rack my brains as to like how many films I had seen where we come into the film knowing the character's super evil in the end. And then we go back to the beginning and watch that journey fully aware of where they're heading. It's kind of a tragedy in a way. This film doesn't go all the way, and neither does Maleficent like the Joker does. But still, there aren't too many examples out there, are there?
No, but it's an example. If you forget about it being the backstory of a villain, it does remind me a bit of just reworkings of films or novels that take other characters that weren't at the centre and bring them to the centre. I think I've mentioned before Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard. So you got these minor characters and then suddenly they're in the frame and Hamlet is off on the side.
That's true. Yeah,
this reminds me a bit of that, and I think
we have those. Yeah, you're right. We have those examples in the world. I just think it's striking when you know of a character as nothing but almost a two-dimensional bad guy, and then you go, let's dig into that. Let's dig into that guy or that lady, and go back to the beginning, and see how they get there. And it's a reminder, of course, that the best villains are the ones that you're kind of rooting for a little bit. You know, like the ones that have those little human qualities that you can admire at the same time as watching them do horrible things, really. So true. And won't it, I couldn't help but think, how is this going to colour my watching of, you know, when the action plays out of when she is the villain? Like, I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, totally. So let's talk about some things that we enjoyed then, because I think we're starting to circle around some of the things that were cool about this. Any thoughts? Let's see. Well, let's talk about the Emmas. Yes. Emma, what's her name? Emma Stone and Emma Thompson. Emma Stone and Emma Thompson. Yeah. Sorry, I was fixated on Emma Thompson because Emma Stone is wonderful. I always like her. But Emma Thompson I found so fun to watch in this, and I thought she was reminiscent of the Glenn Close character who plays Cruella. Even the setup of the fashion house and how she's up the top level, right? Like the set design looks similar to some Glenn Close scenes, but she just was a powerhouse. Did you like Emma Thompson's performance? Well, I was going to say things that I think were cool about this film as well. the two Emmas, absolutely. I thought Emma Stone did an amazing job of the arc of her character, which is the main, really that's what she's there to do in this film, is to sell the move from Estella to Cruella. We have to buy it 100%. And I think she achieves that. I totally agree. Emma Thompson, particularly for the first 2 acts of the film, is a knockout.
Yeah.
I have an issue that I'll get into once we move on to things we don't love about the 3rd act with Emma Thompson and her character, but I'll leave that for then. But I agree. Performances, the 2 Emmas, just solid, so solid. Great.
Can I call out just a couple of things that I loved about Emma Thompson's
go for it.
character? They're not particularly highbrow, but her with the taser, and she says, "I could do that all day." That's so evil and beautiful. And the other one is like the throwing her lunch out of the window was good, but even better was when there's a woman that comes in to the party that is perhaps better looking or has better fashion sense than her. This constant joke of them being tackled to the ground. I just, that got me every single time. And then she throws a chair at someone at some stage. It's just all beautiful visual.
And accuses her of being in the way. I loved it. I loved it. Yeah, no, all of that stuff works so well. And she does it. She transforms as well. Like, if you think about the Emma Thompson roles, there's Nanny McPhee. There was her as the crazy lady in one of the professors in Harry Potter. There's this, and then you've seen her in all of her kind of more normal kind of roles as well. But the transformations are incredible. She's almost unrecognizable in this film when you first see her.
I feel like both of these women are just intelligent, thinking people.
Yes.
I don't know why. Maybe maybe they're just good actors, but it just feels as though they've got some weight behind them and something behind the eyes.
I agree, and I think they both had lots to grab onto with these characters, which gave them as thinking people some real sort of grit to hold on to. Which brings me to another thing that I thought was cool. Writing, directing, we have serious drama director Craig Gillespie, who's done I, Tonya, Lars and the Real Girl, plus others. We've got serious writers, Tony McNamara, who did The Great and The Favourite, Dana Fox, who's done a lot of TV. Great name, by the way. Dana Scully and Fox Mulder put together. Dana Fox. That's probably not what her parents were thinking, but it's cool. And what you end up with is a Disney film that actually has some pretty great, writing and directing behind it. And you end up with a dark story. It's quite a dark adult story in a lot of ways, wrapped in a sort of Disney package, which is great. I thought it was fun. Really fun to watch.
It was fun to watch, wasn't it? Like, I wouldn't put it in my top 10 films of all time, but I just enjoyed it all through. Some of the real set pieces, like when Cruella turns up and shows up Emma Thompson a few times.
Yes.
What were they? There's in the garbage truck. There's locking her in the car.
Yeah.
There's the embedding moths into the into the dress, and then putting it in the safe so it opens up and the moths have eaten everything.
Yeah.
They're all quite ingenious just from a writing perspective.
I agree. It was really imaginative and fun. Yeah. And the other thing you get with this is something that would go right over kids' heads, I imagine, is the whole London punk rock movement that is sort of punk versus the establishment. And you've got that playing out with Cruella pushing back against the Baroness, who is the player in town, the establishment. And they use punk rock theme and lots of music and art and all of that sort of style to kind of highlight that. I thought it was such a clever choice. And it kind of informs who Cruella becomes later. Like, she's got this great kind of edgy, full black and white silhouette with her crazy de Vil car, and it's great. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and don't forget the fashion sort of subtext. I'm sure people that are into fashion could write theses on that. I know my wife Wendy, was watching it for the fashion and commenting on the punkiness of it being Vivienne Westwood, for example. So I'm sure there's all of these references that blokes like us are not even picking up on, but that are quite important.
I just thought it was great. I just thought it was cool. Yeah. I had very little depth to that other than, it's punk. I can see that much. Yeah. Also, while we're talking about cast, a quick shout out to Jamie Demetriou. I don't know if that's right. The store manager, the one who hires Cruella, Estella first when she's doing the cleaning job. That guy,
he's a hoot.
He was hilarious. His face it's the most expressive face I've seen ever, I think, after Mr. Bean. It was ridiculous, over the top, but also pitch perfect and really funny.
That was Liberty's, wasn't it? Is that the name of the store?
Yeah, I think so. Something like that.
Yeah. The Liberty store where it all happened. Me and my wife went there years ago, and I spent more time than I'd like to care to think walking around the around the store, and it was completely recognizable. So either they're just using it like they did today, or it hasn't changed in 50 years.
I reckon it hasn't changed. That seems to be the whole point. We've talked about a few things like some of the other characters, and that I'm just going to throw in an early reminds me. Actually, you've already thrown in a couple, but I was really reminded of that old school Disney style while I was watching this. And 101 Dalmatians is in that style. It's the old animation style where the characters are actually really quite over the top. And I thought they did an amazing job of taking real life, live action, and real people, and making them feel like those Disney animated characters, and yet giving them so much more depth.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, because I felt exactly the same. And my next point was going to be something similar. What I liked about it was not necessarily, I wasn't going to mention how it felt like that all through. I was touched by the very specific nods to the original 101 Dalmatians, and there were two in particular. One was, do you remember when there's just a moment where they cut to an owner and a dog, and they look the same?
Yes. Oh, yes, of course. Yes. That's great.
That is taken absolutely exactly from a frame in the original animation, and the casting of the dog and the person, I don't know if it's CGI, but were perfect.
It was perfect. It was perfect.
It really gave you all the emotion of being in the original story.
Oh, I love it. It. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other one was the ending. Now I'll gloss over the ending of this story, because I didn't really buy into the whole parachute scene into the fake CGI water. No. That was pretty crappy. But straight after that, we get the end scene, which is setting up the next film. And I thought the tone of that precisely reminded me of the original film. You have all the tops of the buildings in London. You've got the original bloke, the original owner, I've forgotten his name, playing the Cruella de Vil song. Yeah. And that just gave me a nice feeling to end up with it. It showed that they were not trying to run away from the original. They were trying to sort of capture it.
They had it totally in mind the whole way through, which is really clear. And it's just such strong, tight writing. The whole thing felt so tight. That's I think one of the things I was really impressed with is that the story, they felt like they had a real handle on it, the whole thing. And there's a lot to get right here. So it was quite impressive. Anything that you didn't love? Let's move on to some things we didn't love and wind in some reminds me's if you have any.
I've got a couple of reminds me's, but I'm going to find them hard to wind in, but I'll give you one. I'm not going to say that I didn't like it, because there wasn't much that I didn't like, really.
Yeah.
But the thing that made me pause to contemplate was the music throughout the film.
Interesting. Yeah, go on.
And it's the opposite of not liking it. Like the soundtrack, like the music that they chose was amazing.
It was amazing.
Like there was the Doors, the Zombies, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin.
All the way through, you found yourself kind of like getting excited every time a new track kicked in.
All my era. So I love that. But Wendy actually said that it feels like cheating, because these were just, it's like Disney showing off that they got the money to pay for all these songs and they just chuck them in there. And
it's true.
There was no real, it probably overpowered the score, which I didn't really notice.
No.
And while I loved these songs, I felt like Disney was showing off, and it just distracted me from the actual film just a tad.
These were like the top tunes of the era. Yeah, totally. And you know what? They had the budget for it. If you're the director and you're making this film, that's the playlist you have while you're researching it.
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, hey, can I have all of these? And Disney would be like, sure, here they all are.
And you're going to take them, aren't you?
You're going to take them and put them in.
Yeah, because every one gives you a warm feeling inside as the audience.
It does. But you're right. It is overwhelming. Yeah, it's a good point. I have a very specific thing that I don't like about it. But like you, there's not very much that I didn't actually enjoy about this film. I thought it was really fun to watch. The one thing I didn't like is that Emma Thompson's character in the end becomes very two-dimensional. In fact, she is basically Cruella that we know, that doesn't have that light side, that good side, the let's understand where this person's coming from. We understand that she's driven, and you get that in the first 2 acts of the film, and you kind of super respect it. But then it never goes anywhere. There's no light to it. And instead she becomes the predictable evil person who's gonna push Cruella off the cliff and always just be in it for herself, no matter what. And that, I feel like that let down the film a little bit. And it let down Emma Thompson's character because I think she ran out of some material. Like it just stopped being a little surprising by the end.
Although I reckon the shade in Emma Thompson's character was there not so much to make her character come to life, but to bring out some conflicted emotions in Cruella Estella.
Yeah.
And then as a narrative device at the end, she just had to become more and more two-dimensionally evil in order to warrant her demise.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but I would just back it up in saying it almost takes us back to simpler storytelling, one-dimensional storytelling at the end.
That's true. And maybe, for the journey of Cruella, we needed her to be kind of evil in the end.
More evil than her.
More evil, correct. That brings up reminds me of for me. So it's an obvious one. The Devil Wears Prada. It's clear. However, the reason I kept thinking about it was that Meryl Streep is such a brilliant baroness. And yet there's some light to that character. And in the end of that film, you respect that character so much just for just how much she's fought, basically, to get to where she's at. And you don't quite you get some of that, but you don't quite get all of that from the Baroness.
Well, speaking of peers, I'll throw that reminds me in.
Yeah.
This is on a number of levels. Black Swan by Darren Aronofsky. So you've got several points of similarity. One being you've got the two nemeses.
Yes.
Natalie Portman's character and Mila Kunis's character with a complicated relationship, friends, not friends, enemies type of thing. You've also got the visually the focus on costume and not so much fashion, but like it's a very visual, fashion-y type feel.
Yeah.
That film. Not that I liked it that much, actually. Black Swan was one of the ones I liked least of Aronofsky's stuff.
Oh, really? Interesting. That's a bigger discussion. I'd love to hear that story one day.
I think it comes back to Vincent Cassel.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't like his performance. Anyway, yeah, cool. I digress. And also probably the main thing with Black Swan is the split personality kind of vibe of it. I think, the underpinning Cruella is this woman who has two sides and snaps, and her evil side takes over, and that's a bit. I can't even remember exactly Natalie Portman's journey, but there's a lot of that good and evil.
There's a real moment where she switches as well.
Yes, yeah.
And that's a real turning point, and you get that in this film, big time.
Yep, and it's a color switch too. It's a black white sort of Black Swan, White Swan.
Absolutely, and the whole mood of the film changes with it.
Do you have any other reminds?
I have a bonus one. It's a bit left field, and I have mentioned it before, so I won't go on it for too long. But I actually thought a bit about Braveheart while I was watching this.
Braveheart?
I know, it's so
goodness gracious, is that just the face paint?
No. Imagine, it's the face paint. I just thought of Braveheart.
Okay, that's good.
It was the kilt. In Braveheart, you've got this revenge film where you have this Scot who basically loses everything and is out against the establishment. He's out against the Brits who are in charge, and he builds a following. And there's some parallels where he has the most loved person in his life kind of murdered in front of him, which then kicks him off onto this journey. And I just kept thinking about like how great revenge films are and that we're watching a Disney film that's kind of reminding me a little bit of Braveheart somehow.
Yeah, credit to Disney on that. Like the reminding of Braveheart, the fact that she gets smashed, early on and, rips up the dresses. Like she does some stuff that is not Disney.
Absolutely. And that's what's great about it. And you can still watch it with your kids. So I watched this with my 6 and 10-year-old, and they loved it.
They did.
My 6-year-old thought it was a bit scary at a couple points because it is actually pretty confronting and violent. However, we all watched together and had a really good time, and there was something in it for the adults, 100%, something in it for the kids.
The dogs were scary, the Dalmatians. Wow.
They were. And when have you ever seen a scary Dalmatian? That was a real strange flip on the whole thing.
Did you expect to see a scary Did you expect them to be the villains?
No.
This would, it's going to change our whole viewing of the next bit if they play true to the storyline.
I honestly don't know. Yeah, I honestly don't know where that's going. That's a question mark for me. Because she's walking around at the end of the film with the 3 Dalmatians. And the Cruella we know, Skins is after Dalmatian puppies to make a coat. So they've got some work to do to get from where we are at the end of this film to that Cruella.
And Cruella's actually given the Dalmatian puppies to the 2 protagonists in the next film at the end of it. So
yes.
Anyway, that's odd. Let's reserve our judgment till we see the next one.
True. Also, this is a Cruella at the end of this film that's too young to lead straight into 101 Dalmatians. So Cruella 2 must take us some years into the future.
Okay. Yeah, so 101 Dalmatians is kind of like episode 4.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
In fact, that brings us back to the Star Wars theme that you brought up earlier. We've just gone to episode 1. This is the Phantom Menace.
This was the Phantom Menace, exactly. But you don't know that Vader's his father in episode 1, do you?
That's true. They gave away too much too early here. But that's what do you do? All right. Well, that's all I've got. Doc, any last thoughts from you?
Just a bonus one, which is almost too silly to mention, and I'm still trying to work out what it is that reminds me of it specifically. But have you seen the original Annie film?
Yes, I have. Yes.
So something about the fact that it's orphan Annie at the start, and Annie's a naughty little girl, but also lovable.
Yeah, totally.
She adopts a dog called Sandy.
Yeah.
So that, and she's also ultimately makes it rich with Daddy Warbucks.
That's right.
And is adopted into a wealthy lifestyle. So all of those plot points match, but it's probably more so Miss Hannigan. Do you recall Miss Hannigan, the kind of like the evil orphanage
yes.
mistress?
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I found her to be just terrifying. She was the villain of that film, and she was almost the stereotypical female anti-hero to me. And I just think a lot of that character plays into, Cruella, and different versions of Cruella too, but this one as well.
The opposite of what you think a motherly woman should be, like that mother figure, just the complete opposite, not caring in any way.
Yeah. That's right. And
as a child, that probably is quite terrifying. It's striking because you've got your parents who you look up to as basically being your everything. And then there's this picture of a woman who just does not care at all for the children. In fact, all she's using them for is money.
Yep. And there's something about the underlying tone that just reminded me of it. And I think it might be something to do with, this is Annie's essentially a kid's film, but you've got Miss Hannigan. She's always drunk. Like if you're an adult, you can tell she's smashed all the time. So there's adult stuff going on. And can I throw in a sub remind me of to that?
Oh, go for it. Please do.
Annie and Cruella remind me of Great Expectations by Charles Dickens.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm getting very Inception here.
I can see that. Yes.
But Great Expectations is again the story of an orphan who makes it rich through inheritance of some sort. Great Expectations also has Miss Havisham,
yes,
who is one of the earliest female.
She's a baroness through and through, isn't she? And
correct.
She's one of the earliest. Yes.
Yeah, and as well as that, you've got the female love interest of Great Expectations is Estella. So I just feel that there's got to be some play in Cruella in the choice of the name Estella, somehow referencing Great Expectations and flipping it in a 2021 way.
That's a great call. I think you might be onto something there, Doc. Yeah, awesome.
There's all
depth.
I got.
And there is a lot of depth in this film. You get that. It shows through.
Well, I loved it. I didn't think I would. I was looking forward to seeing Emma Stone. I thought she'd be cool, but I thought it'd be a bit...
Honestly, could have gone anyway. It could have been really silly. Just, I wasn't expecting the depth that we found in this film. And it was fun. It was good fun.
Okay. Well, let's call it. We loved it.
All right.
And see you next time.
Cheers, Doc. See you next time.